Hello, my name is Judy, and I'm doing this video because I had realized that a lot of people um, don't care or they do not understand the U.S. government, so they don't pay attention to what our politicians are saying or what's happening in Congress. And I just wanted to, and I've already done a video explaining the executive, the Congress, and the judicial powers. So I'm going to briefly review those really quick with you so you can understand the basic U.S. government system. Some people say there's three branches of government, and I believe there's four. The fourth being the people, because the people have strong votes. They can vote a person in and vote a person out. They can petition, they can demonstrate, they can protest. They have a lot of rights and they have a lot of power when you have a lot of people that are going against a petition or when they're voting in somebody. So they can really make a difference when people, citizens do vote and they do protest or they make petitions. So that's the fourth branch of government. The other three are the executive, this is the White House, the legislative, which is the Congress, and the third is the U.S. Supreme Court. So the executive power is the White House, which is the president, his cabinet of 15 people, and their different departments like Secretary of State, Secretary of Housing, Secretary of Education, Secretary of the EPA, Secretary of health. So there's 15 key departments, and they make really important decisions that affect each and every one of us. Like Betsy DeVos, the Secretary of Education, she just took money away from public schools and put $1 billion into charter schools. So these people make a really profound decisions that affect every one of us in America. And these people are chosen by the president. Trump picked this cabinet. And this cabinet is the most richest cabinet we've ever had. They're all millionaires and billionaires that are in our cabinet. And also to say they're unqualified and incompetent for their positions. Most of these people, they didn't get confirmed, and they had to get the vice president to do the breaking tie. So the president, most of the time, what he's doing is he's either passing into law what Congress has passed him a bill, so he's either going to reject or sign it into law, or he can ignore it. And he also can pardon people, and he has meetings with his cabinet. He has meetings in the White House. There's about hundreds of committees, agencies, and organizations that have specific goals they have to do, or subjects like the Native American Association, or the Association for Clean Renewable Air. So there's hundreds of those agencies in the White House, plus the cabinet, plus the vice president and the president. The president is he has power that's vested to him as the president, and he when he was sworn in, he promised to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. So our president also is not above the law. If the president breaks a law, then the House of Representatives can impeach him, which just means he goes to trial. The trial goes to the Senate, and the Senate tries the president, and then they vote whether to remove him from office. So also, the president cannot declare war. Only Congress can declare war. So after Congress has declared war and given him constitutional and authorization, he can then tell the Department of Defense what he wants to do with the troops, what he wants to do with the military money, what he wants to do with the weapons. So he is not the king. He just can't go do whatever he wants. There's checks and balances between all four of the branches. If he signs something into law, the Supreme Court can actually overturn it and say it's unconstitutional, or Congress by 2/3 vote can overturn his decision. So this is how we have checks and balances between the branches, and not one branch is more important than the other branch. So the executive branch, the White House, the vice president. The vice president is in charge of the Senate, so he goes in there when they need to do a tie break of something, of confirming somebody. And also our president, he nominates all the cabinets, and he nominates all the judges and officials into their position, but they have to be confirmed through the Senate, and the Senate has to be a majority vote, 51 to 49. It has to be a majority. If there's a tie vote, and then Mike Pence comes in, and then he votes to break the tie. So that's our executive branch, the vice president, president, the cabinet, and all his agencies. Second, our legislative body is Congress. Congress is a bicameral Congress, just meaning that there's two groups, two houses. In the upper house is the Senate, and the lower house is the House of Representatives. And what happened was our first Congress was just one Congress, a federalist, and then the states came in, and the big states said, well, we have more people, so we should go by population. And the smaller states said, no, we should have equal representation, because we're a small state. So they did the Great Compromise, and Sherman said, okay, so we'll have two houses, equal representation in the Senate, where every state gets 2 senators per state. It doesn't matter what their population is. So if there's 50 states, there's 100 senators. In the House of Representatives, it's proportional. You get so many senators per population. So a small state would get 1, and a big state like California has 53 because we're the most populous state. So in the Senate, you have to be 30 years old, you have to be a 9-year resident in the state where you live, and you have to be a resident in the state that you are running for. They have 6 years. They're elected by their constituents in their own state, and the Senate has unique powers. The Senate has unique powers because they can confirm the judges or officials that the president has chosen to be in an official position. So the Senate is the one that confirms the judges and the cabinets and official positions. That's what the Senate does. The Senate does the impeachment trial, where they whether or not to remove a president or vice president or a senator or a congressperson from office. They have the final choice, and also the senators. Because there's 2 and they're equally represented in each state, they're more deliberative senators, where they can take their time and they can deliberate on whether or not to pass a bill. In Congress, anybody can write a bill in the House of Representatives or the senators. That bill then goes to a committee. If say you have a gun bill, and then it goes to the committee that handles gun laws, and they're supposed to be experts in that, and then the committee makes changes or revisions, and then sends it back into the House or the Senate, and to get voted on. But it has to pass both houses before it can go to the president, and the Senate is is the Senate, what else does the Senate do? Okay, so the Senate is 6 years, and they have a much longer term because they're equal representation, and they're usually more experienced people because they're 30 years and older. In the House of Representatives, you have to be 25 years old, 7 years residency in your state, and live in the state that you're representing. It's only a 2-year position. This is why they have to make sure that their constituents or their own people are happy, or they will not be reelected every 2 years. So that's why. And the House of Representatives also is closer to the people because they're supposed to be responding to what the people want in their own state. So that's why they call it the House of Representation. Also, the House has a unique power. It's called the power of the purse. They're the only ones that can do raise revenues or raise taxes is in the House. But it has to pass through the Senate, but it originates in the House. Only Congress can declare war. Only Congress can declare war, and it takes 2/3 majority in the whole Congress. There's 435 representatives and 100 senators, so 2/3 of 535 people. Also, the Senate has an important thing too. They ratify treaties where the president goes to another country and tries to do a treaty with the country. He comes back and represents it to the Senate, and the Senate can pass it, and they deliberate over whether they want to ratify the treaty. And The House of Representatives also is important because they're closer to the people, and they get every 2 years, so they have to make sure they stay on top of what their people want, and that's why it's very important. There's two main parties in there. It's the Republicans and the Democrats, and one independent, which is Bernie Sanders, Senator Bernie Sanders. Republicans, I can just say one word, which would be Republicans are conservative. That's one word that you could describe a conservative. If you hear the color red, that's usually associated with Republicans, and also the elephant is also their mascot for the Republicans. And when you hear right wing agenda, that's usually Republican, because his right wing agenda is Republican and left wing is Democrats. So the Republicans are conservative, very conservative, because majority of them are all Christian, Catholic, Mormons. They're all in a religious institutions. They're all very religious people. Because of that, the laws that they want passed is based on their religion, on the Bible mostly, or the Quran, or whatever Bible they use. That's why they will never. That's why they're anti-abortion. They're anti-same-sex. They're anti-gay because they think gay is a sin. They're anti. Legalizing marijuana. No, they don't want to legalize marijuana. So in the Conservative Party, things stay the same. They don't want to change anything because, of course, the Bible doesn't change and the religion doesn't change. So they usually like to keep everything the same and not have. They don't want to have same-sex marriage. They don't want abortion laws. They don't want transgenders in the military. So they're very, very conservative for religious reasons, and that would be the Republicans. So if you're a really religious person, you're probably a Republican. And most Republicans actually are from the South, because they call it the Southern Strategy, where most of the South are Republicans. And most Republicans are white also, so that's a majority. In the Democratic Party, you would say the one word progressive. Democrats always want to move forward. Oh, I was going to say Republicans also. They really don't believe in anti-poverty programs. They don't believe in Social Security, Medicare, Medi-Cal, food stamp. Yeah, I don't know why they don't believe in that to help other people that are vulnerable. But the Democrats do believe in anti-poverty very strongly, that we should expand Social Security, expand Medicare, Medi-Cal, and food stamps. And we are pro-abortion, and we believe in same-sex marriage. We believe in gay rights. We believe in transgender rights. We believe in the LGBTQ rights. We're just a much forward, progressing party, because we believe in people getting their own rights. We don't base it on our religion. We don't base it on our personal beliefs. We base it on people's civil rights and their human rights. And being progressive means it's just me moving forward. This is 2018. Yes, we need to legalize marijuana. Too many people are going to jail for having marijuana, which we don't. That's why we have the highest incarceration in the world. We have over 2.5 million people in prison in America, which is outrageous, usually for drug possession of marijuana or other drugs. And what this means, if they have a drug possession, is that they're addicts. So instead of getting rehabilitation, we send them to jail and we criminalize them, and we send them to jail for a couple of years instead of sending them to a lockdown facility for rehab. And they can get over their addiction. So that's the reason why the Democrats is the color blue. That's identified with Democrats, and also the donkey. If that was during Andrew Jackson's time, and they were making fun of Andrew, and they said he's a jackass. They made a donkey, and Andrew took it as a compliment, as a dignified donkey. So that's what a donkey is represented in the Democrats, and Democrats are called the leftist. And Democrats, Democrats really believe in $15 minimum wage. They believe in free college. They believe in Medicare for all, that health care is a right, and that everybody should get health care, no matter if you're poor, rich, or whatever. So Democrats are what you call yeah, they're very into helping, using the government to help people out that are very vulnerable and fragile, that don't have the resources for them, and helping them get the resources. And also Democrats are uh, they're very they're up to the modern times, because right now they believe in stem cell research, where the Republicans don't believe in that. Stem cell research is helping to find the treatment for cancer. That's the main reason why they do the stem cell research, and it's usually from fetuses that were aborted or dead fetuses. That's probably why the Republicans have a problem with that. And there's one independent. And if you ever put that you were independent, I did that once. It was a mistake. I thought independent meant that you were a non-party, but actually independent means you're an independent party. Bernie Sanders is in the independent party. He is not a non-party. So if you ever put independent when you go to vote, you might not be able to vote in the primaries because you are an independent and there's no independent running in the primaries. So make sure you put a Democrat when you're independent, put Democrat during the primaries so that you can win that. So that's Congress. The main reason Congress is there is they write laws. That's the number one reason they do. And number two, they declare war. That's the number two thing they do. And our founding fathers wanted Congress to be the most important branch. I think it's because they represent the people. These people are from representing their own people in their own states. So that there was proportional representation in the House and equal representation in the Senate. So even when there's a constitution, right after the preamble, it says that all our laws will be written by the Senate, and the House of Representatives shall be written by the House of Representatives. That's right after the preamble, and our founding fathers said that the Congress should be the most important branch because it's representing the people. Okay, so we go on to Congress, the Supreme Court. Okay, so the Supreme Court has one Chief Justice. What's his name? I'm sorry. I have the name of the Chief Justice. The Chief Justice. Chief Justice is John Roberts, and the other 8 justices, it's Republican ruled because there's 5 Republicans and 4 Democrats. Oh, I forgot to mention, the White House is Republican ruled and Congress is Republican ruled. The Senate has more Republicans in it, and the House of Representatives has more Republicans in it. Which means if only just Republicans voted, they could pass anything they wanted. But most of the time, Democrats are able to talk some and Republicans to come over their side to help them pass a bill. And if there's a tie in the Senate, the Vice President comes in to break the tie. So the Chief Justice is John Roberts, and there's 8 other justices: Clarence Thomas, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Stephen Breyer, Samuel Alito Jr., Sonia Sotomayor, Anthony Kennedy, Elena Kagan, and Neil Gorsuch was just confirmed by the Senate, which he had a lot of problems. Senators had really disagreed with confirming him because he was an extreme rightist wing, and he had just too much of a conservative streak. So he would not help in when you have civil cases. He would be way too conservative in judging those cases. That's why they fought confirming him. So there's 9 justices, and the oldest one is 85 years old, which is Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and she's a Democrat. And I don't think she wants to retire until another Democrat can replace her. I think that's the reason why she's sticking around. Sometimes you hear the U.S. Supreme Court called the SCOTUS. It's Supreme Court of the United States. And the Supreme Court goes over cases or controversies that have been already decided by a lower court. by a federal court, and they've exhausted all the federal court's appeals, so they send it to the Supreme Court. You can petition for it's called a writ of certiorari, the cert. So you have to petition for a writ of certiorari, the cert, and how the court chooses cases is a petition from the Solicitor General to listen to your case. The federal government chief lawyer is a Solicitor General, and he screens out all the cases eligible to be heard. And it's actually, you have to be really, really lucky. It's like winning the lotto for you to go to get heard in the Supreme Court, because I heard they get several thousand cases a year, but they only take 80 to 100 cases to be decided on. For the judges to actually hear the case, it's called grantii certiorari, and 4 of the 9 justices have to agree to hear it. So 4 of the 9 justices, you don't have to get 5. You just have to get 4. The rule of 4 to get heard. Discussion on which cases to choose happens at the convention. So the judges have a convention, and at that convention, at least 4 of them have to agree to hear the case. So if the 4 judges agree to hear your case, or 1 out of 80 that wish to hear it in a year. And then, if you're heard. If the 4 agree to hear your case, both parties submit briefs, which are written statements of why the law should favor their position. And the party that wants to overturn the case is called the petitioner, and the party that wants to uphold or affirm their decision is called the respondent. The petitioner also files a reply to rebut the responder. So like the petitioner files a reply to rebut the responder. Often these are often there's a lot of other more briefs, because other special interests or other organizations will put in their own briefs, called amicus briefs. Amicus briefs are from other organizations and other not special interest groups. They will put in their own amicus briefs into this case, and it has a legal, economical, or historical arguments that sometimes persuade justices appear in their opinion. There are also ways interest groups can attempt to influence the Supreme Court. After the briefs have been filed, the court schedules an oral agreement. So they file the petitioner and the responder file their briefs and all the other amicus briefs. After it's filed, the court schedules a date to make an oral representation. So, and during the oral presentation, each side has half an hour to make their case. Most of their time in the Supreme Court, most of the time is answering questions from the judges. After an oral argument, you wait for a decision. So after you've made your oral argument, you've answered all the questions from all the justices, and then you wait for a decision. The justice holds another conference, so all the judges hold another conference, and in order for the court to render an official decision, 5 of the 9 justices, a majority, must agree on at least one of the legal arguments that either affirms or overturns the lower court's decision. So you need a majority vote to either affirm or overturn this decision. So in the conference. Or they can send it back to a lower court and say, why don't you take care of it? The Chief Justice presides over the conference and assigns the task of the court decision called a majority opinion. The opinions can be given, a judge can give his opinion in writing or orally. He can just say what his opinion is. A single majority agreement that a strong statement of unanimous. Okay, so yeah, you have to have a unanimous decision. The holding is the decision to affirm or overturn the decision. So a holding is a decision to affirm or overturn. The decision is called the holding. The legal reason behind the holding: if a judge agrees with the holding in a majority opinion, but for different legal reasons they write 2 concurrent opinions. Many of the Supreme Court cases are not unanimous. Most are decided by a 5-4 margins. So I think there's only been a few cases where it was unanimous, like Board versus Education. But most are right on the line at 5-4. And remember, there's 5 Republicans. So if just the Republicans voted on everything, they'd pass everything they wanted to pass. A justice that doesn't agree can write a dissent. So a dissent does not get precedent over lower courts and has no force of law, but often dissents are very eloquent and they can provide arguments that might persuade lower courts in similar decisions. So if a judge has a dissent from their decision, he can write his own opinion, and it can be sent and help the lower court. There are a lot of hurdles you have to go through before the U.S. Supreme hears your case. Several thousand cases come up, and only 80 to 100 are really the Supreme Court rules over. To understand the Supreme Court, we have to understand the thinking behind the court's decision. So the thinking behind the court's decision is that the Solicitor General, the one that's screening out these cases, he usually chooses the ones that can be constitutional or unconstitutional, that they can give a constitutional decision. They can use the Constitution to overturn or affirm a decision. They're supposed to be using the Constitution to make these laws. A Supreme Court heads the judicial branch, the only established by the Constitution. It's a national importance. It's called equal justice under the law. Explain and interpret constitutional powers to judge whether federal, state, local government creating written the law and can decide if the president is unconstitutional. Decisions are absolute and final. When the U.S. Supreme Court makes a decision, nobody else, not the president or Congress, can change that. It's absolute and final. Thousands of cases and only 100 are considered. Sometimes they can use the electoral votes, 538, and you need 270. So, when the Supreme Court makes a decision, this is a very, very profound decision, and this really, really changes our society, and it changes each and every one of us. They have very, very positive decisions, and there were some really, really bad decisions. These are the really, really good decisions. In 1954, Board of Education made segregation unconstitutional, saying blacks and whites should go to school together. And Gideon versus Wainwright in 1963, Gideon argued that he didn't have a lawyer, so he couldn't represent himself, and the Supreme Court agreed with him that he should have a free lawyer. And because of this Supreme Court rule, that's the reason why we get a free lawyer. So that really was you see how important these decisions are. If we cannot afford a lawyer, we get a lawyer for free. I've done this. I've gone to a court and said, I don't have a lawyer, I can't afford a lawyer, and he's got me a lawyer within 5 minutes. So this is really important. We all have a lawyer, whether we can afford it or not. We get representation. Also, one was Mapp versus Ohio, which said that if you don't have a search warrant, you can't go in somebody's house. So if they go in your house without a search warrant, all that evidence they got is not going to be admissible in court. So you have to have a search warrant. So the cop comes to your house and they say, we want to come in. You say, where's your search warrant? You can't come in my house without a search warrant. Otherwise it's an illegal search, and they cannot use that. Also, Miranda versus Arizona in 1966. Miranda said that he made a confession that he didn't mean to say, and he didn't think it should be admitted because he did not get read his rights. And Supreme Court agreed with Miranda, and that's how we have the Miranda rights. police have to tell you your Miranda rights. You have the right to remain silent without your lawyer. You have to get your Miranda rights read to you when you're getting arrested, so that you cannot talk if you don't want to without your free lawyer. So that's why it's important that you don't say anything to cops, because they should have told you don't have to say anything without your lawyer being present, your free lawyer, so you understand how important these cases are. In Roper versus Simmons in 2005, a cruel and unusual punishment. It is cruel and unusual punishment to execute persons for crimes that they committed under 18. So a crime committed under 18, the Supreme Court said, no, you cannot execute a kid that did a crime when they were 12, 13, 14, 15, under 18. So that's a really, really good thing. We cannot kill our own children, execute them for no reason at all. It's unconstitutional. It's cruel, unusual punishment. Also, the one that U.S. versus Nixon, during Nixon's time in 1974, the president, like I said, is not above the law. Nixon didn't get impeached because he resigned before the impeachment. Two other presidents got impeached. That was Andrew Jackson and Bill Clinton. They got impeached in the House, and then they went to the Senate, and the Senate did not remove them from office. So they got impeached, but they didn't get removed from office. In 2015, Obergefell versus Hodges. In 2015, the Supreme Court legalized same-sex marriage in all 50 states. So that's a really, really important law. Here are some terrible laws. 2010, Citizens United. The Supreme Court said corporations are people and can give unlimited amounts of money. Corporations are not people. Corporations have a CEO, a board, 50,000 people, and like billions of dollars of money. People don't have that. Corporations are not people. This is a terrible, terrible decision, and we're trying to make an amendment to overturn the decision. This is why we have corruption, because because it's legal to give unlimited amounts of money. That's just terrible. So, and that makes, when a politician takes money, his vote is very biased. When he gets $10 million, he's going to vote for to help his donor, over helping the best interests of his own people, his own constituents. So politicians will make laws that cause us harm, Americans harm. So this is why we cannot have corporations giving unlimited amounts of money. Citizens United is a terrible decision. Also, one of the oldest one that was a really bad decision was Dred Scott versus Sanford, which Dred Scott was a free slave, but when he went to another state, he was denied citizenship to all African American slaves. So slaves cannot be citizens. That's what Dred Scott said. That was in 18. I think it was after the Civil War, like 1870. And then you've heard of Plessy versus Ferguson. It upheld the equal but separate but equal. Separate but equal. So that Plessy versus Ferguson, it said that segregation was illegal in all states. You could be segregated in all states. This is where the Jim Crow laws come in, where you have the white fountain for white people and the fountain for the black people. You have black people sitting in the back. These are all the Jim Crow laws started after Plessy versus Ferguson. So the Supreme Court makes extremely profound laws that affect each and every one of us. And every law that gets passed, the worst has been Citizens United, and the other two ones are from the 1860s, but Citizens United is the worst. I want to know who voted yes on that, so I'm going to look on who voted yes on that. Obviously, they had a 5-4 vote. 5 of them voted yes, and 4 of them voted no. So I think 5 Republicans voted yes, and 4 Democrats voted no. The fourth branch of government, which people don't think there is, I believe, and the Founding Fathers also believe, that the fourth government is the people. Citizenship is a man's basic right, for it's nothing less than his right to have rights. The mark of a good citizen understands that they have a responsibility to the community, the environment, and the law. Citizens born in the U.S. are naturalized citizens, and then other citizens are they get it through when they go through. They have to pass a citizenship test. A good citizen votes and obeys all laws. Your ethics, your morals, and your values, and your sense of duty. A citizen, you have the opportunity to question rules, laws, or actions you don't like. You want social change. We have the First Amendment of free speech, free petition, freedom to assemble, with a permit, of course, and the powers of the people. Voters for special re-election. We can boycott. We can start propaganda. Our vote, when we vote, it's very strong because we're voting who's going to make the laws in Congress, and we're voting for who the president's going to be. So our votes are very, very important. And not only that, we can, as a society, Americans, we can petition the laws that we don't like. We can march and protest against laws that we don't that we think that are not good for us, and those are our rights. We have very strong rights, and that's how things get done. That's how the civil rights movement got won, and that's how the women's rights movements got run. It's because people stood up. History shows over and over again, we cannot do change just by asking people. We have to demand change. We have to stand up against those who go against us, and we have to, it takes all of us in America, the whole 99% of us against the 1%. Unfortunately, our government is not a democracy anymore. They've become an oligarchy. An oligarchy means that the rich people control the politicians and what the politicians do. And this is just a tragedy. It's outrageous, ridiculous, and it's totally unacceptable. And we have Bernie Sanders called Our Revolution, a political revolution to get back our government from these rich people. That's why we need to overturn Citizens United. So our rights as citizens, we have a lot of rights, and if we all stand up together, we can get our government back by fighting against those corporations and overturning Citizens United and making an amendment. You can make an amendment in your state, or you can make an amendment in your in Congress to overturn that decision, that horrendous decision that the Supreme Court made. So and also, you know, that Americans are granted inalienable rights in the Constitution, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what Congress should be working on. Congress, when they make a decision, they need to ask themselves one question, and that question is this bill going to help improve the lives of American people? If the answer is no, then you cannot do that bill. That's the reason. And the Republicans, all the bills that they pass, the answer is going to be no, because they want to cut Social Security, anti-poverty programs. They want to cut Obama. They don't want to do strict gun laws right now. We're having a problem with Republicans signing in for banning assault weapons, silencers, the loophole in gun shows, and yeah, we're having a problem getting Republicans can come over and help us do strict gun laws. And they just passed a law where it's illegal now to sue, to have a lawsuit or a group lawsuit against a bank. We can do arbitration, which means one person at a time. That tells me that our government thinks that the banks are above the law, where they cannot be sued. That's outrageous. And I'm writing a resolution to my Senator Dianne Feinstein saying that bill is outrageous. It narrowly made it through the Senate. The Senate was 50-50 on it, and Vice President Pence came in and voted that bill in. That's how, and then the president agreed, and that's how that bill passed. So I'm totally devastated by that passing of the bill. Banks are not above the law. In fact, banks break the law a lot of times. Wells Fargo just paid billions of dollars for opening millions of accounts on their customers that were not aware of those accounts. So, and also they did the crash in 2008. Banks, we can't trust them. If they break the law, then they need to be sued. They need to be sued, and they need to pay the price. Since none of them go to jail, we can at least monetarily to take their billions of dollars from them and make them pay for what they do. So yeah, so this is why you need to be politically active, and you need to understand what your government is doing. I recommend that you should know who your two senators are, who your representative in your district is, who your congressman is in your district is. All you have to do to understand that, you can just Google it, senator in Ohio or whatever. My senator's in Ohio. I'm in California. I have Dianne Feinstein and Kamala Harris, and my representative is Ed Royce. He's a Republican, and thank goodness he's not going to get reelected again. And I also have Josh Newman as my congressman. So if you get on their newsletter, you can get a lot of information sent to you to the email. Also get on the White House newsletter. Every day you get a mail of what the White House is doing and what the White House's goal today or this year is, and you get that. And also join like the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, whatever party you're in, so you understand what's happening in your own party, your political party. So just remember those four branches: the executive, which is the White House; the legislative, which is Congress, and all they do is write bills. And the president either passes or rejects those. Supreme Court is the third one. What's happening in the Supreme Court, and then the fourth is the people. What are the people right now? Right now, we just had a March for Life, which was a march to have strict gun laws because of the shooting at the school that killed 17 people. So right now, the people are very, very, very strongly support strict gun laws, banning assault weapons, banning silencers, having a no-fly for those people that cannot fly, having a federal database, also banning silencers and banning large magazines. Which people should. Why do people need 2,000 magazines? What are they shooting? If you're a hunter, I don't know why you need an assault rifle. It's gonna take you 100 bullets to kill. Sure, it would take one or two bullets to kill a deer. And then what are you going to do? You take the antlers and leave the deer? It's ridiculous, okay? I believe in the Second Amendment, but I don't think our fathers knew that later, like 100 years later, we would have weapons that could shoot out 1,000 bullets a minute. So I think that the Second Amendment means that we can have a handgun, because it only takes one or two bullets to kill somebody. You don't need to shoot them 200 times with an assault rifle. That's totally unnecessary. Assault rifles are weapons of war. We are not in a war here in the United States. We don't need to have those assault weapons. And then also, President Trump, we know President Trump is a stupid idiot. He's an idiot. He wants to give military weapons to our cops. Like, at what point would a grenade launcher work for our cops? That a cop's going to use a grenade launcher against civilians? Are cops going to use bayonets? The cops ask for bayonets. So cops are going to use a bayonet to stab people with? Are cops going to use a lot of tanks, to go through a neighborhood? Police are already over militarized. They don't even look like cops. They dress like army people. These are supposed to be peace officers that protect and serve, not be in the military holding military weapons, and not be hold grenades. At what point would a cop use a grenade on civilians? These are weapons. They're weapons. We don't use these weapons. Why would Trump think that he would use these weapons on his own people? What a stupid idiot. He's going to give cops grenades, grenade launchers, tanks, and bayonets to use on our own civilians? He's so stupid. Oh my gosh. I'm so done with Trump. He's just destroying America. He's a total idiot, imbecile. Please, we're not going to build your stupid border wall, okay? That wall, because he's racist, paranoid. If he has any evidence, he has no evidence or facts to show that Mexicans commit more crimes or that Mexicans are rapists. He has no facts or evidence. This is all because he's delusional and racist in his mind. And no, we're not going to have your stupid military parade. Usually they do a military parade when we end a war. We're not in any wars. We're not going to spend millions of dollars to have Trump's military parade. This is ridiculous. We don't have money to spend on that. Okay, and the money from your border walls is going to go towards our anti-poverty programs. Just in case you didn't know, Trump, we're not going to build your stupid wall. Um, I don't even know where to go with Trump. I can't even start because it'll get me all hyped up. But anyway, just remember, that's our branch of government. Just what's happening in the White House, what's happening in Congress, what's happening in the Supreme Court, and what's happening in America right now. And that is that we want strict gun laws. That's we just had that march for the strict gun laws. So that's it. So you just have to remember those basic things. What's happening in the White House, what's happening in Congress, what's happening in the Supreme Court, and what's happening in America that people are up in arms about. And that would be gun laws. We want strict gun laws. We want to ban assault rifles, large magazines, silencers, and we want background checks. We want a federal database. 93 people die every day from guns, which I think is outrageous. And then we've had 300 school shootings since 2013. This is just ridiculous. And most teachers don't want to carry a gun around. Okay, I know that Trump said if they have any kind of training and weapons, they can hold the weapons. I just can't see a kindergarten teacher walking around with a loaded gun in her pocket. Okay, and teachers don't want to do that anyway. I think we should have metal detectors in the schools, and that the whole school should be locked down except for one entrance that has a metal detector that will go off and set an alarm and close all the doors and make the doors bulletproof until the cops get there. That if they can hold him off for 5 minutes, that'll give enough time for the cops to get there and to shoot him before he starts shooting into the school. 300 school shootings since 2013. That's totally outrageous. Our students are not safe. We need strict gun laws. That's why we had this march on March 24th on Saturday, where millions of Americans came out to march against it. Also, other countries joined us to help, say no against guns, because America is the only country that we have a lot of guns. A lot of our citizens do own guns. True, maybe 60-70% own guns. I don't own a gun myself. I don't think I need it. If something does come up, I'll have to think really quick of something. If someone comes to my house or whatever, I'll tell them, take whatever you want and just leave. I don't care. I don't want to carry a weapon, and I don't believe having a gun in the house, because most stories I hear is injuries of people with their own guns. They're injuring themselves cleaning the gun, or a child finds a loaded gun. So I don't want to have a gun in the house. I'd rather, most people keep their guns in their house. I don't want anyone to accidentally shoot themselves in here. I'd rather be proactive and make sure I lock have a double door lock. Also look through the peephole. I'll just deal it with the gun, but I don't. People can have their guns. A handgun. You don't need an assault weapon. That's for war only. So, please think about all keeping on top of our government. Make sure that we do not. They do not pass a lot of laws that causes harm, and that they pass laws that's in the best interest of Americans, that help. They pass laws that improve the lives of Americans. Those are the kind of laws we need to see. We don't need to see these ridiculous laws where you can't sue a bank, which is ridiculous. Banks are notoriously do illegal things. My bank did a lot of overdrafts which were not correct. In which I had to go and fight and make a written statement with them so they could take out $200 worth of overdraft fees. So you have to really watch your bank, because banks do a lot of fees, slide a lot of fees into your statement and overdraft that you don't deserve. So you have to be really careful about your bank statement. And I would say the top banks, Citibank, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, all those big banks, don't do those banks. They do risky business with your own money. They take your money and they do risky investments, and that's how we had the recession in 2008. It's better to be in a credit union or your community bank because they're going to be much safer. They're not going to do risky investments with your money. Your money's safe. And in fact, the community bank that you go to or the credit union bank in your neighborhood, they usually help the organizations in your city. And that's where some of the money goes to. So those are a much better choice for you is to go for your community or your credit union in your bank. Okay, so stay on top of what's happening in the White House, Congress, the Supreme Court, what's happening in America. That's easy to do. All you have to do is just Google it. What's happening in the White House? You Google it. What's happening in Congress? It comes right up. So Google is very easy to find out all your information. Try to find out who your senators are, who your representatives is, who your congressman is. Because for me, I email my senators and my people a lot, and I also call them a lot. I call Dianne Feinstein today to make sure to tell her about the bank law that I am very upset about. But anyway, so take care, stay on top of politics, and just know what they're talking about. If you know who your politicians are, and they start talking, you can understand what they're saying. So you just listen to what's happening, and you can follow along and see what they're passing in Congress, what the president is doing. Yeah, we really have to run Trump. Trump's a disaster. He's just a disaster. All his judges, all his cabinet people that he picked were totally unqualified and incompetent for the positions. Why he picked these people, the worst people to take these positions, when they all had very personal agendas and extreme agendas? They didn't even believe in the department they were working for. Betsy DeVos, the Secretary of Education, she does not like public schools. She only likes charter schools. The reason why she put $1 billion in the charter school, took it away from public schools, and 90% of students go to public schools. She should not be the secretary because she only wants charter schools. And she's done a lot of other terrible decisions. Ben Carson from the HUD department, okay, he has not done anything to make affordable housing yet. And also Scott Pruitt denies climate change, and he's the director of the EPA. This is a guy that's supposed to be making sure our environment is pollution free. He needs to be fired. He's a lawyer, had no scientific background, no scientific information at all. He doesn't know anything about science, and you cannot be the EPA director if you're not a scientist. Okay, this is a lawyer. He doesn't know anything about the environment, pollution, or contaminants. And most of the scientists are leaving, quitting, because they said he's a moron, which he is a moron. Another moron is Ryan Zink, Secretary of Interior. They've been taking away land like the Bears Ears, taking away land and using it for oil drilling or fracking. He needs to get fired too. Anyway, everyone take care and you have a good day. Thank you.